Okay, so we left off with having your questions and sections and the math calculations set up the way that you wanted it in your model. That's sort of where we left off last session. The next step before you want to use it, and I'm just going to switch over to the product now, guys. You will get these slides each have some tips on each section of what I'm going to be verbally telling you about, but I'm going to switch over to product. There we go. So the next step before you can truly start using the questions that you've built up is to set up your packages. So I'm just going to save and continue here and get into an actual model. Sorry, I'm taking frequent water breaks. All right, so the first thing that you want to do is set up your pricing parameters. So here we have the list of questions. We have our sections that we built out last time. I'm really just using one of Mark's models for demo purposes and letting you know how I've edited and tweaked it for my own purposes. We've looked at this pricing parameters page before. I'm going to turn my cam off, so you're not looking at the side of my head while I demo. So I'm over here on the pricing parameters page. We have glimpsed through this and looked at a few different sections before, but we're going to go through the essential ones that need to be set up. And then also I'm going to let you know about ones that aren't really essential, but I did choose to set them up anyway. This page may look a little intimidating or confusing at first if you're brand new to the software. That's why I'm going to just quickly show you the ones that you really want to set up at first. And then in some more advanced sessions, we'll be covering some of the other things. The first thing we have is this section at the top for package names. And you can see in the software, we have 5 different columns of probable package names that you can use by default. Most people in their packaging software will have 3 packages. So when that's the case, I use the middle 3 packages. So that's the first thing that you need to decide is how many packages do you want to work with? In this template, the default names are premium, full, and essential. These are free form text fields, and we have the ability to rename them. So I'm just going to go ahead and rename them as gold, silver, bronze, which is what most people typically use in the beginning. Some people get really creative with their names, which I love. I've seen some out there that I totally want to steal and copy, but I can't. But yeah, I love those. Whoops. Sorry, guys, I clicked the wrong button. There we go. Okay. One thing to note, there could be situations where you're only wanting to reveal one price to a customer. Maybe it's a cleanup model that you have, and there's only one price that you've agreed on with the client or something. If that's the case and you're not revealing different packages with different prices for them to choose from, it is essential that you use this column here, which I have just renamed to bronze, but in your default is called essential. If you are only using one price, one total price that you're revealing, it needs to go into this essential column. That is the column that is mandatory to be used. The other 4 are optional. So when you're renaming your packages, do keep your package names short. These will appear on the final screen when you reveal the price, and you just don't want it to take up a lot of real estate on that page. The tooltip text in this next section here is not one of the essential items to get up and running, but I am going to talk about it for a minute and tell you how I use it. As you can see, by default, the middle three boxes have text in it, and that's because, again, most people use 3 packages. So in the templates, Mark does give us some text. There is a scroll bar here where you can scroll through, or I'm not sure how big this appears on your screen, but in the bottom right-hand corner, there's also a little button that you can click and drag to make those cells bigger. Well, not cells, it's not an Excel spreadsheet, to make those boxes bigger where you can read everything that's in it. So this is what comes in by default. It's what a lot of people will stick with in the beginning. You can reword it a little bit. How I've chosen to use this is I like to briefly explain. I create an anchor. If you've done any of Mark's other pricing training and have learned about price psychology, you know about creating an anchor price. So what I typically have here in my models is, I would say something along the lines of that the, excuse me, the bronze model would be similar to having a casual on-call bookkeeper doing their work for your company once a month or so. Then in my middle package, my silver package, I would say this is comparable to having a staff bookkeeper part-time that works for you maybe once a week. And then my gold package, I say that it's equivalent to having a full-time bookkeeper on staff doing everything, all of their bookkeeping work for them, whereas the other ones, they might just be doing certain skills, and then the owner is responsible to do some of the other things. When I create the price anchor, I will have done some homework and research on this client and the area that they've been in ahead of this meeting, because remember, my pricing process, I will have already had probably about a 15-minute or so call with them. I will have already had a diagnostic review. I will have already done a fact find meeting with them where I get a lot more information. So there's quite a bit that I know about this potential client already. And I would be able to do a little bit of research about what the going rates are for a part-time or full-time bookkeeper in their area. So in my gold package, which is the one that I'm going to show you in a minute about how you can label one as most popular. That's the one I have labeled as most popular. I create a price anchor there. So my tooltip for that one would say something along the lines of, this package is similar to having a full-time bookkeeper on staff with you, with a total compensation package of salary and benefits equaling approximately $80,000 a year. And that $80,000 a year is the anchor that I have now just set up for that client, because I will have already tested my model ahead of time, which we're going to go through today. I don't want to have any surprises at the end that show up when I reveal the price. I know that my price is going to come in less than what that anchor is. So my price is going to seem smaller by comparison. So that's the tooltip section. Again, you can just leave it for now as the default. So it's not one of the essential items that you need to do right away. What is one of the essential items, though, are these next 2 sections for minimum and maximum. This is where you can choose what you want those minimum and maximum prices to be. Pretty self-explanatory. So I call the minimum as my get out of bed price. For most of my models, my get out of bed price is $500 a month. So I don't take on any clients that are less than that. So that would be the minimum price that would show up when I'm quoting somebody. So I would set my minimum price as 6,000 because remember, these are annual prices. And then regardless of how the customer answers the questions as we're going through that, even if they were to say no to almost every service that I offer, their price would still not appear as less than $500 a month. So there would be no surprise low prices for me when I reveal the price at the end. Then we have the maximum price field. This is if you want to put a cap on what your max price would be. The default in the templates that Mark gives us is usually 100,000. To date, that has been sufficient with me. I've never had a client go over 100,000 on their quote. However, I did mention in a session previously that I have a client that is getting close to that when I did their last annual repricing meeting. So the next time I go in to use my own model, I'm actually going to be tweaking that and changing it and bumping it up a little bit. There is no reason that having a high maximum would be a disadvantage to you. Having a low maximum would, because then what would happen is if the way that the customer answered the questions worked out to a price that was higher than your maximum, it would still only display what your maximum is. So you would be leaving money on the table in that case. But again, leaving the default as 100K is usually good for everybody, unless you're in a position where you are quoting very large jobs, if that's your type of ideal client. Just take a look. I've been playing around with this model already. I believe the default maximum for the essential package, or the one that I've just renamed to bronze, I believe that default is a little lower in the maximum field for the other two. I think it's at about 19,000. So I just went in and bumped it up to 100,000. I can see a use case scenario for when you might want your essential package to be a lower maximum. And that could be, you know, maybe you're working with some startups, maybe the essential package is the one that they are choosing most often. And they may have chosen yes to a lot of the questions because they have all these big aspirations of all the help that they need. But you may want to put a cap on what you price for them, just to give them a bit of a break. Next, we have our relative price multiplier and also kind of the relative price add. You can use one or the other or both. Actually, I keep my models pretty simple and I only use the multiplier. Basically, what this is in your essential column or my bronze column, I have a 1 in here. And that means that whatever the total base price is that gets calculated when a customer has answered all of the questions, that is what the base price is going to appear as for the essential column. Then for silver and gold packages, we increase the multiplier. In this model, I have it increased by 1.3 for my silver package and 1.5 for my gold package. So basically what this means, guys, is if your customer answered all of the questions and the total base price came up as $1,000, that's what would show in your essential column. But because you offer additional services in your silver and gold packages, it would automatically, in this case, add on 30%. So the price would then be $1,300 a month. And here it would add on 50%. So your price would be $1,500 a month for those two packages. So you want to build, though, it depends on your packages and what extras you are offering in them, of what type of multiplier you want to use. I actually have my premium multiplier set quite high in most of my models, like 1.8 or even 2. And that's because in my premium package, the sky is almost the limit where just about everything is included for those premium package. We're going to talk about enhancements or add-ons or upsells, they're also called. We're going to talk about those later. I do still have some of those for my premium package, but for the most part, everything is included, and I just have a really high multiplier for that package. So I know that however they answer the questions, I am covering the amount of work that I'm doing if somebody chooses that. Then the one that's the relative price add, again, similar feature, except instead of multiplying by a percentage, which we've done in the multiplier field, here you can add on a flat rate amount. So let's say your quote came up as, your base price quote came up as $1,000. I'm just going to use the same example, but your relative price add-on, maybe you want to just add on $500 if they choose that package, or $1,000 if they add on the relative price package. So again, you can use these two packages together. You can use the multiplier with how the calculations would work. It would multiply by your percentage first, and then it would add on whatever addition number you had here. I've said it quite a few times through all of these sessions. I keep my models really simple. The more complicated I make them, my thought process is that the more chance there is that I might break it and may have to spend more time figuring it out. So if the multiplier works, and it does for me, then that's all that I need. The bells and whistles are there for us to use them if we want them. I do like bells and whistles in my vehicles. However, in my pricing software, I've had really good success using effective pricing just with very simple models. Okay, the next two fields are the rounding on and rounding amount sections. I'm going to skip over those. We did briefly talk about them in a previous section. For today, these are not an essential item to get up and running. It's more of an advanced item that we will look at in more detail in another session. What is one of your essential items, though, is this period spread over section. This is when we reveal our price. It's going to break it down into either a total price or a broken down price. I just said that. Or a broken down price. So for example, if you wanted to reveal just one total price for the job that you're doing, then you would put, again, we're just using the middle three columns. You would just put a 1 in these columns. And that means when it reveals the price at the end, it is just going to show one total price. Most of us book work on a recurring basis and usually monthly. So I typically have most of my models set to 12. This will then take that total base price that gets calculated, and it's going to break it down into 12 monthly payments. And so some other examples that you might have here could be, maybe you're doing a cleanup job, or you're set. So here's an example of maybe a one-time one that you're doing. You might have a model where you're setting somebody up for a cloud accounting system. I have a model like that. It's a one flat rate payment that they have to do before I set them up and complete the work. So it's not available as monthly payments. So in that model, I would have ones in here. Another example when you might have something other than a 1 or a 12 is maybe you're doing a cleanup job. I have a couple of different models for cleanup jobs. I have one that I call cleanup job short or small. I can't recall the exact words that I use. And then another one that's called cleanup long or large. If it's my small, and again, I know this from doing my diagnostic reviews. So, I know if the client is behind in their books. I know how far behind they are in their books. I know approximately how long it's going to take me to get them caught up. So if it's a small cleanup job or something that I know is going to take 3 months or less, then I would have 3s in here and I would split that payment up over 3 months for them. Whereas if it's a longer cleanup, then when I'm pricing the client, I would use my longer pricing model, my cleanup pricing model, and that one might divide the payment over 6 months. So you can set this up however you want it to be. The next setting we have here is your display options. This is where you determine which packages are going to display on your final reveal screen. You'll see in the drop down here, you have 3 choices to hide, show, or reveal. So let's say it is one of those models where you're only revealing one price. So we're using this essential column or my bronze column. You would click show in that column, and then every other column you would click hide, and they would then no longer show at the end when you do the reveal. Default again for most of us is that we have 3 packages, so I usually leave those 3 as show. But what is handy to have is this reveal one. It might happen where you have a scenario where you're going through your packages with a client and you've revealed everything for them, and maybe none of the packages are really what they need. Even your bronze or essential package is more than what they need. You could have another package here in the default. It's called light. And then there's also a super option over here. We leave these 2 on the sides and we use the 3 middle because that does give us the option if we wanted to build in a super premium package or an extra essential light package. And in that case, we could choose reveal for those ones. And what will happen when we reveal the price to our clients at the end and we're going over our packages, we have a choice of whether we want to reveal these packages. They will not show up by default. So when you're talking with your customer and maybe none of the packages are quite right for them, you could then toggle your reveal option at the end, and then that final package would show up. So for our testing purposes today, again, I only ever have 3 or 1 packages, so I've never actually used these, part of my keep it simple model. And again, a lot of this has to do with who your ideal client is or your niche. We've talked about that before as well. My ideal client is not somebody that would need an essential light type of package. If they were the type of client that needed that type of package, then they're probably not somebody that I would want to work with anyway. So if they're not able to choose one of the packages that I already have, then they wouldn't fall into my ideal client. I do see some questions coming in. I'm just going to finish the last couple of fields on this slide, and then I'll jump over to questions. Following that, we have this order of reveal, not an essential item to be set up, but basically what this means when you get to the reveal page, you can see in here I have 2, 3, and 4. That means that when I am revealing my packages on the final page, and we'll see this later today when we go into a live quote, when I'm revealing my packages, I can reveal my super package first, and I can say to them and talk through it with them, these are all the things that are included with your premium package. And then I click my mouse and the next package appears. And then I can take a few minutes and review with them the differences between the two, what's not included in the medium package that is included in the premium. And then same thing for the bronze package. So I can choose all of them to reveal at the same time. And just by putting the same number, I would just put, it says 2, 3, and 4. Because if these ones were to say show, they are number 1 and 5. So that's why these middle two say 2, 3, and 4. But if I wanted them all to reveal at the same time, if I didn't want to go through them all at once, I just want boom. I'm doing hand signals here and you guys can't see me. Then it would just say, they would just all appear at the same time. And then I could review everything for the clients together. I'm going to keep it as 2, 3, and 4 so I can show you how that works. And then the last button we have here is this most popular button. Not an essential item, but it's one that I do very much like to use, and it's very easy to use. This essentially just allows you to choose one of your packages that you can put a little flag on the reveal screen that says most popular over one of your packages. I have found when I'm watching some of Mark's training and some of the other trainers and other people that I do effective pricing work with, most people are choosing their middle package as most popular, and there's nothing wrong with that. I myself choose to use my premium package as my most popular flag. And so far, gonna knock on wood or something, every client that I have quoted through effective pricing has actually chosen my premium package. So even though it's not an essential item, for today, I am just going to go ahead and choose our middle package, just so I can show you on the reveal page what that looks like. Remember, I'll remind you about this a few times to hit save and continue. And this will now bring you to your packages page. I'm going to pause here for a minute for some water and questions. Michael says, do you have a question? I don't know what that means, Michael, if you are asking me if I have a question, or if you were just dropping that into chat to help me out to show everybody an example of how they should post it. Mark's, I'm going to skip over. I'm not sure if that's a question. Okay, so Marty, will this software support 3 payment options within each package? For example, annual price with discount, semi-annual price with discount, and monthly no discount. Marty, I don't believe so. So there are ways that you can manipulate your models and create options with some of the enhancements and the behavior rewards at the end. I personally don't use the software the way that I believe your question is saying. So I think you're saying you want to have gold, silver, and bronze package. You want to have 3 packages, but for each package, you then want to have 3 payment choices. So if they choose gold, they would have 3 payment options. One is if they pay annually, another one is if they pay semi-annually, and third is if they pay monthly. So there is a payment plans page at the end that we can look at later. And I think that may answer your question then. If it doesn't, then ask me again when we get to that point. Yui has a question. For your light package, will you still have the minimum as your get out of bed price? I don't use the light package, but if I did, yes, I would. My get out of bed price is really my get out of bed price. For me, I have a price that's just not worth it for me to train my team on any specific nuances for that client and stuff. to do any setup and stuff. I just don't really like to send out monthly invoices that are less than a certain amount per month. So if I was using my light package, yes, I would definitely still have a get out of bed price. It's not to say that your get out of bed price has to be the same as your other minimum prices. You could lower the minimum price. So if I go back to that pricing parameters page, if you had a light package, you could have a different minimum price here. So that is an option, Yui. I hope that helps answer your question. Stephanie says, it seems like there are some things that show up in the model packages that aren't directly related to the questions we set up. Example, create a procedures manual or access to training library. How do I, whoops, question disappeared. How do I get these out of the package if I don't want to use them? I'm going to show you that shortly, Stephanie. We're going to be looking at setting up your packages. So just, I'm going to park your question for a minute. Okay. I think that is all of the questions for now. Okay. So that is the essential items sheet that you will get when you get the handout that has your tips. Now we're going to talk about setting up your packages. So I'm going to go back over, and again, you're going to get these sort of key points. So now we are going to look at actually setting up your packages. And this is where, Stephanie, I think we're going to answer the question that you had. So I got here just by going to the packages page. And remember, guys, you can easily toggle through things here. Just be sure if you've made any changes, hit save and continue. I tend to hit save and continue all the time anyway, because I don't always remember if I've made a change when I'm toggling back and forth so much. But here we can start to make changes to our packages page. This section is really easy to modify. So this is, again, what's in here as one of the templates that Mark provides. And it's really easy to modify, just the same way that the questions were that we covered in the previous section. So first you have this button in the top right corner where you can add a component. And I'm just going to say, give it a name of demo test. Let me put a little tooltip in, testing the demo. And here I will say, I have options of how I want it to appear, whether it's a green check mark, a red X, so that would be the included or excluded. And then there's these three other fields of free, not applicable, or text. So free will actually put the word free. So let me put that here on my bronze package. I want it to say free for this demo test component that I'm adding. So you can see what that looks like. This will actually put the word free on your package, which is what your client will see instead of the green check mark. Then you have a not applicable option, which I will put on, actually just, let me just move these around a little bit to make them make a little bit more sense. When you use not applicable, it will put a dash mark on the screen. And finally, there is this text button, which when I click that, it gives up a free form text field that you can type in whatever you want. I'm just going to type in the word bonus so you can see how that looks. Again, this is a field that you want to keep your free form text short. I wouldn't use more than 1 or 2 words maximum. It starts to get really convoluted looking on the screen and could even start to cut some fields off if it starts to get too long. So if I save this, You'll now see this down at the bottom. Here's this new component that I just added called demo test. Here's my little tool tip, the letter I with the circle around it, that when I hover my mouse over it, I see my tool tip of testing the demo. And then here's the options that I selected. So in my premium package, I used the text field and I typed in the word bonus. In my middle package, I used the free radio button, which types that word in. And in my basic package, I used the not applicable radio button, which puts a dash mark in. Okay. We have the ability, just like on the questions page, to move things around in this screen. We can just click the little radio buttons and move things up and down if you want them to appear in a certain order. I'm going to move this one back up. Quite often we want all of our green check marks to be in order. So that's just displays nicely. You can display it any way you like, but that tends to usually be the norm. Stephanie, I think the part that will answer your question is when you have something in here that is not something that you want. So perhaps unlimited email and telephone support is not something that you offer. You can just delete it from the template that you are using from Mark, and that will now not appear when you are showing your packages. So I hope that answers your question. If it doesn't, just drop a follow-up question in for me and I'll try and pay a little more attention to the detail of your next question. Any of these questions, you also have the option to edit them. So maybe you do want that item to be part of your packages, but maybe you want to change the wording a little bit. Maybe you want to change which package it's included or how it displays. So you can do any of that by clicking the edit button. So that is where you will set up your actual packages page. And again, remembering to hit save and continue to any changes that you made. I'm just going to do a quick check for questions about packages. Okay, Stephanie has said, how do you set up a periodic review of staff entered books when you may only be checking but might also need corrections? So, Stephanie, sorry, I'm going to try to clarify again of how I understand your question. So you are reviewing staff entered books. You mean the staff of your client or the staff of your firm? Because if it's the staff of my firm, that is built into my price already of what I quote them for the monthly recurring revenue. Those are my staff. I have trained them. And when I'm reviewing that work, whether it needs corrections or not, that responsibility lies with me. If your question is, however, that you are doing a review of your client's staff that have done the entries themselves, and you're checking but may also need corrections, I would build that in as a buffer in your price. Sometimes you may need to do corrections, sometimes you don't. I would build it in as a buffer into my price so that you're getting the same price of whether you need corrections or not. And in the end, if it turns, you want to hope that it comes out as a wash, that you're not spending more time doing corrections than times that you're not. So for example, kind of a different scenario, but just how I've worked a buffer in is for my software costs. I cover majority of the software costs for my clients, but I have a buffer built into my pricing model that when these software companies like Intuit or Receipt Bank or something, when they increases their prices, I'm not operating at a loss in the price of what my client builds or is billed because I have that buffer built in already. and I will be doing a pricing review meeting with them before the software increases their price again. So that buffer is always there in the background. So that's how I would set that up for how I am interpreting the question that you've asked. Yui said, what's the impact of setting up the base price in relation to the relative minimum? How can you use both in setting up your pricing? So Yui, I believe you were in the previous session. I think you've actually been in all of these sessions. It's actually not required to use the base price. What that does, and actually the base price in the models is usually zero. I don't think I've ever seen a template model where the base price is zero. And basically what that does is when we get to the final review page and we're looking at how the base price calculates, when your base price is zero, that's what your very first question is going to start calculating from, is zero. If you put a base price in $500, your very first question, before the client has even answered that question, they're already getting charged $500. How it relates to the minimum is when you get your total base price after they've answered all of the questions, that is when the relative minimum then kicks into place. So it's two different types of calculations that are happening. The base price is right from the very beginning before they've answered a single question. The minimum price is after they have answered all of the questions and the software is breaking it out into monthly payments for you. Christina said, can you give an example of where it would be appropriate to use the X versus the NA? So, yeah, let me just go back to my packages page. And again, this is all really different for everybody's firm. So here you can see with the X, in this model, we have a dedicated account manager, which is included in the premium package, but is not included in the silver package. And it's also not included in the bronze package. But if I went into bronze and said not A, that means that it's not even available to those clients. So if a client wanted to choose this bronze level package, but they wanted a dedicated account manager, that is not an option that's available to them at all in that case. And it could be that when I have an X, when we get to the add-ons later, I may have it as an add-on that would, like in my middle package, I may have it as an add-on. Would you like to have a dedicated account manager at a cost of an extra $100 a month or something? In which case they don't have to have it chosen here as part of their package, but they can add it later as an add-on. However, if it's not applicable at all, then it means that they can't even have it as an add-on later. Mark says, I understand the camp of people that value creating separate packages for, let's say, bookkeeping, tax prep. However, let's say one of the items in the tax prep includes quarterly tax estimate planning, but can't be done without the bookkeeping getting done at least quarterly as well. Then I don't know how to manage that catch-22, having two independent service packages. So Mark, I see a bit of a conversation going on there. It is a pretty long question that's got quite a bit of conversation. So I am going to skip over that. If you do specifically need me to answer, if your question hasn't been answered by some other people that are helping, just maybe really drop my name in. But you've done it the way that I would do it, is if I need to have a bookkeeping package and a tax prep package, I would have two different models, or I would still have with a client what I do sometimes. So Mark talks a lot about having a separate model for payroll. I actually have a bookkeeping model and I have a payroll model, but then I have a third model that's bookkeeping and payroll. So if I have a client that needs only bookkeeping, I use my only bookkeeping model. If I have a client that is doing their own bookkeeping and they only need payroll, then I use my payroll model. If I have a client that needs me to do both bookkeeping and payroll, then I do use that model and I give them one price. So I think what you could do is have 3 models like that. You could have your bookkeeping model, your tax prep model, and then you could create a third model that is a combination of bookkeeping and tax prep questions all together. And when you know ahead of time that the client is going to want both of those services, then you could put it all together into one service package and one monthly price that you're giving them. Lots of questions coming in. Stephanie, referring to previous question of client staff work review and potential corrections by build in a buffer, does that mean increasing the base price? Yes. Or in some of my questions, I would ask them, you know, my question about, do you want us to scan your documents for you? Which obviously means that they're going to be using Receipt Bank, whether they say yes or no. It's a requirement for me, for my clients to use Receipt Bank. So I would build that buffer into the calculation on that particular question. But I also have it built in, it's part of my get out of bed price that I have. Yui has another question. When I did the test for the model using the review tab, it came back with minimum fixed price amount has been reached. We're going to talk about that. We're going to actually force that error to happen in a bit when we get to the review page, Yui. So I'm going to park that question. Ashley has said, is it possible to change the wording from free to included? Ashley, not if you're choosing the free option, but when what you can do is use the text option and type in the word included. Okay, so I hope that helps. Oh, I see Sarah and Ashley and stuff had answered for you already. And then Christina, I answered that question already. Okay, good. So again, here are the key points that you will get on the package. So now we're going to look at the next page. When you click save and continue here, it is going to take you to this behavior rewards section. This is a, sorry, water. This is, in more common terms, referred to as a discount. We don't typically like to use that word, so we call it a behavior reward, where we are we're giving them the discount, but not for free. We're getting something in return for giving them that discount. So it's a reward for some type of behavior that they've done. So you can see in this template, some of the examples that are here is, will you scan all of your purchase invoices with Receipt Bank? Obviously, if they say yes to that question, that is going to save me some time, right? I mean, if somebody is putting everything into a tool like Receipt Bank or HubDoc, and I have my bank feeds turned on and things are syncing and automatically matching for me, it's like, oh, what, like wonderful, right? Things that used to take me an hour or more, 10 years ago or so, before I started using some of these cloud programs, now take me less than a minute, but my client is still paying the same price. So that profit is going directly to my company. Let me see some people drop into chat if they, are using this concept of, understanding about how using these tools saves you time that you would previously spend doing the work yourself. So I'm going to just edit this Receipt Bank question. And I'll show you at the end how this appears. So when you're in here, you can change how the question is worded. And then you have a couple of boxes here. One is a drop down that says display as tooltip, none, or description. I'm just going to leave it as tooltip for now. I'm going to talk about this drop down in a bit. And then we have a description that I've typed in of when I ask the client, will you scan all of your invoices with Receipt Bank? I want it to show as a tooltip, and that tooltip will say to them, if you do this, it will save you 5% on your monthly invoices. And then I have a discount in here that will subtract a percentage of 5% from whatever the base price is. So you can subtract, let me just actually go back in there. You can subtract a percentage or you can subtract an absolute value. So I may say I want it to subtract $500 or $100. I tend to typically use percentages in here, and I think it's a little more attractive to the customers. Actually, it's kind of weird because my enhancements, I tend to use single absolute price add-ons, which we're also going to look at in a minute. But my rewards, I tend to deduct as percentages. Not quite sure why I do it like that, but I do. It just seems to be how my brain operates. So our next section, if I were to click save and continue here, our next section is the enhancement section. But I just want to jump over into a quote and show you how the behavior reward section looks. So I'm just going to go to my gear icon. I'm going to go to clients and quotes. I have one that I started yesterday for demo purposes, so I'm going to go into that and edit it. Okay, and I'm just going to jump ahead to my fixed price screen. So this is now the screen that your client will be seeing. So this view is obviously a little different than what we see. We can see our tooltips that we had on the pricing parameters page set up. We can see that we selected 12 monthly payments for them. Don't pay attention to the numbers, guys. This is a test model that has a bunch of wacky stuff going on that I've changed here and there. I will show you how I'm going to purposely break these numbers later to show you some troubleshooting. But what I want to show you right now is this button right here that says BR. It says BR because it's really subtle. A customer is not going to know what BR means. If this button were to say discount, then right away when they are looking at this, they would say, oh, what's that discount button do? Is there a discount available for me? But when it says BR, I have never had a client ask me, what does that BR button do? They just don't know, because we do not want to get in the habit of offering rewards to every single quote. We only want to offer it if we're at this screen, we've revealed our price, the customer says, oh, you know, I'm really interested in the full package, but it's just a little out of my budget. Your first line of resort would be to go back to the questions and see if there's any changes of questions. Maybe there's some things that they answered yes to that they want to change to no to lower their price. And you can go back and forth like that a couple times. If you still just can't get to a price that they are comfortable with, but you really want to work with this client, maybe they're your ideal client, maybe they're in your niche, maybe they are a challenge for you. It could be an industry that you want to work with and you need to spend some time yourself learning about that industry. For whatever reason, you want to work with this client, you can choose whether you want to offer the reward. And you would do that by clicking on this behavior reward button, and now they see this. So here's my first question. Will you scan all of your purchase invoices with Receipt Bank? There's my tooltip that says if you do this, it will save you 5% on your monthly invoices. So if you can see right now, we have some prices down here. If I say yes to that question, it automatically instantly changes the prices. And so they can say, oh yeah, it's under $8,000. That is the perfect price for me now. Let's go ahead with that one. So I'm going to select that package and then say save. Another thing that I had, I'm just going to go back to rewards for a minute. In a previous session, we had talked about being able to add behavior rewards on the fly if it's not part of an actual model. You do have the option to do that if you are finding while you're in the pricing meeting with a client that there's a reward that might be enticing for them, but it's not built into your model. It's not one of these questions that you already have here. You can add it right while you're in the meeting with them, which kind of you can word it and say, you know, this is something that I'm doing just for you because I think we're going to work really well together and I want to be able to offer you this reward that is specific for your situation. So you can add something in here. I'll just say, I'll do this one as a description. Test demo. I just want to show you how this one works a little bit differently. And then when I click save, that now appears here. And here's how in the previous one I had a tooltip that I need to hover over. When I choose description from that drop down, it appears automatically without me needing to hover over it. And we're going to talk in a minute about good use case scenarios for that. It's important to note if you add a reward here on the fly in a meeting with a customer, this does not change your model. So if you find that it is a behavior reward that you do want to start offering on a regular basis, you would need to go back and edit your actual model, because in this case, it only changes it for this quote only. So now when I click save and continue, it takes us to the enhancements page. I'm going to do a quick pause for water and questions. Stephanie said, is there an ideal ratio or psychology of checks and X's related to each package? For example, if the essential has 3 checks, the full has 8, the premium has 14. I have never heard that, Stephanie. I've attended a lot of Mark's training sessions. I don't recall him ever mentioning that in any of the price psychology. Some of our other power users in the group, if anyone else has ever heard that, maybe if you could let Stephanie know, but my answer to that would be no, that I haven't heard of that before. And you can often think about this even when you're shopping yourself, guys. A lot of people use packages, right? If you're shopping for a vehicle, or, you know, even when you're at Starbucks, you know, people have, or shopping for a computer, or Mark likes to use Apple products, or whether you're purchasing Samsung products or a laptop. There's lots of companies that use this package system. And I don't think that I've ever seen a specific ratio of how many of each package needs to have a check versus earn X. Kate says, when going to the reward screen, several questions are displayed. Wouldn't the client say, what's the discount? If I do all of those things listed, how much additional discount can I get? Is there a way to not show those additional questions? The model, I'll go back here. The model is going to show whichever questions you have typed in. So this is what's in the template. You can choose for each model what questions you want to appear. So if you only want to offer one behavior reward or two behavior rewards in your model, you can delete ones that you don't want. You don't need to have this many in here. And then, like we said, if there does turn out to be an extra one or two that you need for that particular client, you can add them manually at that time. But your model, no, does not need to include, what do we have here? 4 different questions. But remember as well, when you're setting up these questions, these are discounts that give you something in return. It's not just a discount for the sake of giving a discount. So even if you have 4 rewards in here, I'm not going to use the word discount. Even if you have 4 rewards in here, if they answered yes to every single one of those rewards, you should, if you've set them up properly for what works for your business, you should still be coming out ahead, even if they select all of them. Okay. All right, let's move on to the enhancements screen. So here is the tips page that you will get with the handout. And now here we are in the enhancement screen. So at the top of the enhancement screen, it tells you the payment level that you're at so far. Again, don't pay attention to the numbers that are currently in here. But once we've offered we've gone through our behavior rewards, customer has selected, we've reviewed, all of our packages. They've said, I'm really interested in the full package, but it's a little too expensive for me at $8,300 a month. We go in here, we offer them a reward that brings their price down to $7,900 a month instead of $8,300. I now select that and hit save. That $7,900 now carries forward to my enhancements page, and it tells my client at the beginning of this enhancements page what their current price is at. So much like a lot of the other screens that we've been in, I'm actually going to jump back to my model for this. I'm in a live quote here at the moment, but I'm going to jump back to our model management for this first, and then I'll go back to the quote to show you how it works. So I'm going to just jump straight to the enhancements page. Again, I can click and drag things around. I can click and drag entire sections. I can add sections. I can delete sections. I can edit sections, add enhancements. Really similar, guys, to a lot of the other pages in the software of the options that we have. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this page because it is so similar. In the question type, again, you can choose the 4 different question types that we have, the 8 different calculation types, your default yes or no value. One tip that I would offer is I always have it set as a no value by default, because that way, if a customer does not choose any of the enhancements, it is not going to impact their price at all. Keep in mind, again, these numbers that you're adding in here are annual prices. So in this case, I have a tooltip that says for $75 a month, we will also complete your sales tax returns each quarter and file them for you, which is going to add $900 a year onto their base price. But when it reveals the monthly price, it would be $75 more. One of the key differences that I do want to show you here, though, that is different from the questions, is that when you click on the edit button for a section, you have the option to choose which packages you want it to be an available add-on for. So this is a really powerful tool. So for example, my bronze package may have that green check mark for one meeting with me quarterly. But let's say the client wants to choose the bronze package because everything else in that bronze package is what they need, except they want a monthly meeting with me. I could put that as one of my add-ons, and then I could say that I only want it to be listed as an add-on for my bronze package. I don't want it to be listed as an add-on for my silver and gold packages because maybe it's already part of those packages. So I could say that I only want that upsell question to appear if somebody has selected on that previous screen where we're selecting which package they want. If somebody has selected my bronze package, when I get to my enhancements page, this will appear as one of their add-on questions. And then similar comparison for my silver package, they may get a monthly meeting, but perhaps they want weekly. So for them, I could have a question that says, would you like a weekly meeting? And I'm going to say that I only want that question to appear if they have chosen my silver package. So I'm going to just change that back to what it was. So that is one of the key differences about when you're editing your enhancements on this page. So you can really, again, add. So I picked probably 3 or 4 things. And again, becomes a bit of trial and error of knowing which things are popularly requested from other packages that aren't included in lower packages. So it could be a bit of trial and error. I typically have about 3 or 4 enhancements for each package. And so I had mentioned earlier about how my premium package includes almost everything. And I said that I would show you at the enhancement section of how I would add something for my premium package. So one of my premium enhancements is if they want to deal specifically with me as their dedicated account manager rather than one of my team members. Now, that does not mean that it is not my team member that is doing the day-to-day work. It just means that for monthly meetings and, you know, common communications and stuff, they want me to be the person that they talk to. So that is something that I offer only to my premium customers. And it comes at a pretty high rate because I'm obviously only one person. And if I ever got to a point where I felt my time was starting to get too full, where I did not want to offer that as an option anymore, I would just delete it from one of my enhancements. So that is the enhancements page. Let me flip back over to a quote and show you how that appears. I'm going to just jump over to my enhancements page. So again, here at the top, we have what the client's price is currently based on the previous screen, based on whatever package they've chosen. Here's my add-ons. So here I have the example of for just $75 a month, we will also complete your sales tax returns. I could have added this as a tooltip, which would have then given me the option to hover over it rather than having it automatically reply. So when a customer says yes to any of these questions, you can see how their price changes automatically, and they will be able to see that during the meeting. So you could say for an extra $100 a month, we'll also account for movement of your inventory. If they say no to that, my price is going to go down by $100 a month. So let's say they've chosen this sales tax return. So this would be how somebody else had asked earlier about how they could incorporate doing sales tax returns into a bookkeeping model. This is another way that you can do it. And I'll hit save and continue. I now get to my payment plan page. So I'm going to stop here for a moment for questions. So Jeff says, on the pricing reveal page in a live quote, I have noticed that the tooltip actually cuts off the copy created from the pricing parameters page. Let me go back to the tooltip. Cuts off the copy created from the pricing parameters page. Jeff, I think if that is something that's happening to you, then I would reach out to the team. That isn't happening to me with the tooltips that I have, both in a question format or in my packages format. And also this one comes from my pricing parameters page. So I'd say reach out to the support team about that. Or also keep in mind that we don't want these tooltips to be super long, right? Just like some of the other free form text fields where I had suggested keeping your words short, although the tooltips can be a little bit longer, you don't want them too long. So Yui says, do you set a relative minimum for services for diagnostic reviews and cloud setup? Yui, I have a flat rate that I charge for my diagnostic reviews, so I don't actually personally use effective pricing for diagnostic reviews. I have a flat rate for those. For cloud setup, I do have incorporated into my onboarding fee because it is mandatory for my clients to be on the cloud. It's part of who my ideal client is. So again, that is built into a flat rate package that I have. There is a model that Mark uses for cloud setup. I'll just go into his template right here. And he does have minimums set in here. So I don't do it like that myself. If I was, then yes, absolutely. I would always be using that minimum for any model that I have, because I don't want there to be a surprise low price for me at the end, regardless of whether it's cloud setup or bookkeeping or payroll, whatever service it is that I'm quoting. I would have a relative minimum set up so that I don't get a surprise at the end. And then you've also asked, what do you think about using the enhancements to set up packages for other services like QBO setup? Could you do it? Yes. Would it be a little convoluted? I would recommend actually having a separate package for QBO setup, because there's so many things that you can factor into the questions of a QBO setup model that would just be far too many questions for an enhancement. So that would be kind of similar to your cloud setup question before. I would choose to do it as a separate model rather than doing it on the enhancements page. Yes, you could do it on the enhancements page, but I think in order to keep the number of upsell questions, because remember, they've already chosen a price and now you're upselling, I think your upselling questions, you want to keep a fairly short list. You don't want to be upselling the customer. Oh, do you want this? Do you want this? Do you want this? And it starts to just become really salesy of all these extra things that you're offering. Whereas if you, and they're going to see the price for each individual thing that you're adding. Whereas if you did it as a separate model and they have all of the questions that you're offering, they're not seeing the price as you're going through. They're only seeing the price at the end when you reveal. So I see some chat here with Mark and Jessica talking about how even if somebody selects all the rewards, that you have your system set up, you have your model set up, that it's still not going to be less than your minimum get out of bed price. So you're never going to be at a price that you are not happy with yourself. Even if they choose every single reward that you offer, every single discount that you have available, you are still going to be happy with the final price that they end up paying. Mark says, does print only print the final chosen plan, or can you print a quote with the multiple options for them to choose online? If so, how would you show enhancements or options? So I'm going to go back into a quote here. September 23rd one. So I think, Mark, that you're talking about this screen here on the payment. Oh, sorry, to choose offline, I meant to say.
I meant to say, like, if you don't do it in real time and you wanted to send them a printed package that says choose one of these three.
From this package page here.
Right, like we built it for them online without them there, and then we send it to them, choose one of these packages. Does it have that capability?
This is what you can print. It doesn't give them the option to go online and make a choice. But you can definitely send this to them in an email, and they can review it a little bit more and get back to you and let you know which choice you want. You're welcome. And then using the sales tax question as an enhancement, if some clients require monthly tax reporting versus quarterly, how would you factor the price for the one yes or no question? Okay, so let me go back. So, okay, Michael has answered that. All right, we have about 15 minutes left, so I'm going to move on. If Michael's answer doesn't answer your question, Mark, then we'll come back to it. Okay, so these are the tips screen that you'll get in the slide deck for enhancements and optional extras. Next, we're going to talk about descriptions. So, and this is what you'll get on your printout. I'm just going to flip back over to our demo. So earlier I skipped over a couple of the description fields for the drop down and said I was going to come back to them. I wanted to give a little bit more detailed for this part in its own separate instruction area. So as you've seen through all the sessions we've done so far, there's multiple places where we can change the wording or the description of the way questions are worded or how they're described or the tool tips that we had. There's multiple places where we can create that little eye with the circle around it, and when we're presenting to the client, we can hover over it. Giving the description a little more detail here, I want to go to the behavior rewards section. Actually, let me jump back over to model. Okay, so in the rewards section here, I showed you this one, how it was displayed as a tooltip. And so when I hovered over it, it showed this description of, if you do this, it will save you 5% on your monthly invoices. And then on the enhancements one, I had it displayed as a description, and the description said for $75 a month, so on and so forth. I don't need to read it again. So let's look at this for a minute. I'm going to go back to rewards. And we're going to talk about some use case scenarios of when you might want to use each type of option. So you're familiar with this tooltip option already. You're familiar with the description option. You'll see there's this other option, none, pretty self-explanatory. Basically, the main difference is that the description is going to automatically show to the clients right away. As soon as that component or question or section appears, there will be a description in a slightly smaller font immediately underneath, and it shows right away. So that is a good option to use description if you want it to appear all the time. The tooltip, however, will only show to the clients if you hover your mouse over it. So a good example of when you would want to use the tooltip is if it's not necessarily something that you need to explain, or you want it as a reminder for yourself, or perhaps you have somebody in your firm that is doing your pricing for you, and you want to remind them to talk about it, and you've trained them to pay attention to the tooltips that you've added, that it means that you want them to mention something. So let's go back and look. So I've changed this first reward question to a tooltip, and the first enhancement to a description. So I'm going to just flip back over to that quote, and we will look, whoops, I want to edit the client. So now if I go to jump forward to fixed price and go to my behavior rewards, here's this first question where it appears as a tooltip. And if I go save and continue to my enhancements page, this is how it appears when it's the description, when it's the slightly smaller font. Another deciding factor, and I'm not going to get too much into it today, but it is going to come in, I think, our next session, is how this information will display on your proposals if you're using the proposal aspect of the software. If you're using the description option more than the tooltip, you have more customization options available of how that will appear in the proposal. I'm going to kind of leave it at that for today, but it's something to think about when you're choosing whether you want tooltip or description, is to know that if you're choosing description, you're going to have some more customization options available. All right, I want to get into testing your model and troubleshooting math problems. So here's some tips that you're going to find in your handout. So let me go back over to my model. All right. So before every single meeting with a client, I review my model. It took a minute for it to populate there. And I do that, I just jump ahead to my review screen. If you remember from a previous session, here's another, there's 3 options of where you can toggle a model to be live or draft. This, of course, was our 3rd option, so that's on this screen. But what I do is I come to this review screen, I just jump ahead to there. I click my calculate button and I start scrolling down through the list of questions. So all of my questions will be here in one page. So they are still broken out into separate sections that I may have, but where a client would see a separate page per section, for my purposes here, when I'm reviewing my model, all of my questions will appear on one page. And I can just scroll down and watch how the price is building. So here you can see my base price is at 0. So no matter how they answer this first question, the price is going to start at 0. If you had a different base price in, let's say you had a base price of 600 or 1,000, your number would start at 600 or 1,000, and all of your calculations would go up from there. And then I just start answering some questions. So if I change this to 121 to 230, currently for the 1 to 10 option that was there, it's showing $600. When I hit my calculate button again, you'll see that that price has now jumped up to 2,400. And I go through here, guys, and I test every single question. At least once. I test a couple of different combinations of things. I've chosen professional service business from this drop down on purpose because I want to show you currently when they've answered this question, the price was 2,400. The previous answer here was bars, cafes, and restaurants, which the price goes up if they are in that category. However, if they are in professional service business and I hit calculate, you'll see the price did not jump up as much as it did as if they were in the bar industry. That's because I don't charge as much for somebody who's in a professional service business rather than if they're in a bar or restaurant. This question here is one of the units and number of units question. You'll see the price does not change here. I'm not going to get into detail about that. We did talk about it in detail in the last session. It is something that quite often will break your model if you're not using those two questions correctly. So if you haven't looked at the session from last month, please do make sure that you review that. But this type of question is a number question, and it does not, at this point, have any effect on the price. Somewhere further in my model would be another question that would be a units, number of units price, and it would then multiply whatever that number of units is by this number that I've entered, and that's where it would then change the price further in my model. So looking at this model, I can see the price is good. I'm not going to demonstrate changing everything. We've got about 5 minutes left, and I still want to show you how to troubleshoot some things. I have a feeling that I'm going to go over a few minutes again, just because I want to be able to jump back over to chat for questions. So you can see when I get to the bottom, my price just keeps adding. So everything looks good here. At the bottom, I have my total price of $8,767.60. Now I have this pricing table at the bottom that there is my base price. And remember, I set up my packages that my bronze package is a 1. The relative multiplier is a 1. So whatever my base price is whatever my bronze package price will be. And then my silver price, my silver package I had set up as a multiplier of, I think, 1.3. So that one's about 30% higher. And then my gold package, I had a multiplier of, I believe it was 1.5. So this price is now about 50% higher. There's also some rounding and stuff turned on here. So the packages that would display to, so this is our view. This is not the client's view. So what the customer would see is 12 payments of $735 or 12 payments of $945. It's really easy. If you see a problem somewhere, and I'm going to purposely create a problem here in just a moment to show you how that breaks. But, and I'm going to show you the two most common ones. But if this is all looking good, you have your base price, your package prices are higher than your base price, then at this point, you're good to go. You can just, oh, and there's another calculate button at the bottom here too. You don't always have to scroll up or down to use them. But if everything looks good, at this point, your model is ready to go. You can just hit save and continue. Now I am going to intentionally break the model. So now we're going to get into troubleshooting some of the math problems. I just want to show you two of the most common problems and the two breaks that I'm going to create. So one of them, I believe it was Yui that asked about earlier about when you get an error message about minimum and maximum. And then the other error that most people run into is incorrect multiplication. So I'm just going to jump back over to my pricing parameters change here. And I'm going to change my minimum and maximum numbers. And I'm going to make my minimum 10,000 instead of 1,000. And what was my price? 8,000 something. So that'll be good. Now, if I hit save and continue to save that minimum change, and I go back to my review page and hit calculate, I'm looking, all the numbers are adding up. Everything looks good. Oops, I've got some error messages now. There's a couple of different ways that you can spot this error, guys. The first thing, obviously, is this big warning message or error message that you've got. But the other way that you can tell is my package prices have not changed. All of them say 10,000, 10,000, 10,000, but my base price is 3,583. So if my base price is 3,583, why is it saying that my package price is 10,000? It's because I have told the system that the minimum price that I want is $10,000, regardless of how somebody answers the question. So that's error number one. Same thing can apply on the opposite side. If you have a maximum if you see that their maximum price is $11,000, their maximum base price, but these package prices are still coming up as $10,000. And you would have error messages here that then say that your maximum fixed prices amounts have been reached. And then no matter what the base price is, your max price would still be 10,000. That's error number one. I'm going to go back and change these back. Almost done, guys. I'm going to show you one more typical error. Let's use the scan your records. I think that's the option I was using. So let's say, do you want us to scan your records? Question. And I am going to go back to the quote. And I'm going to say, whoops, sorry, I want to just go to my review page. I don't need to go back to the quote. Bear with me, guys. All right, so I go to my review page. I'm going to click calculate. I see that my price is adding. But remember, I said I want to test every one of my questions at least once. So this, do you want us to scan your records? Let's say the customer says no. and I click calculate, my price has now gone to 0 and it has started recalculating from the next question at $450. So now my price was building. It was $2,028. Now my final price is $1,150. If you see that, it is typically an incorrect multiplication problem. So if I go back to my questions and I find that scan your records question, when you are using the multiply calculation type, your no value has to be a 1. Standard math, guys, anytime you're multiplying a number by 0, the answer is going to be 0. If you want it to be the same and not change any of the calculations or math that's added into the price, then you need to multiply the number by 1. I'll just show you the next question. If you remember, my price was going back to 0 and then starting from 450 again. That's because the next question in the flow had a yes value price of 450. But now if I go back, so I've changed that to a multiply factor of 1. If I go back to my review tab and click calculate and say no to this question again, you'll see instead of saying 0, it just has no impact on the price now. It's still just the same price as what it was at the end of the previous question. And then it continues calculating with the other ones. So that is, I'm going to jump over to questions, but in case anybody needs to jump off, I just wanted to let you know about the sessions that are coming up. So on October 24th, we're talking about crafting your quotes, a step-by-step guide. Then the November 21st session is perfecting your proposals. So that's where I'm going to be demonstrating a little bit about the descriptions we talked about today and how they appear in your proposals. And then our last session for the year will be about efficient integrations. I need to highlight that the November session is going to be starting half an hour earlier. So that will be 10:30 a.m. Eastern time, 3:30 p.m. for our UK time people, and 7:30 a.m. for our Pacific time people. Okay, so I'm going to slip back over to our demo and jump over to questions. If nobody has any questions, I'll just say you're free to go ahead and jump off, and thank you for coming. I feel like I'm super over on time. I think I didn't start my clock on time. Sorry, guys, I thought I was only a few minutes over, but I think I'm about 20 minutes over. I love effective pricing. So, okay, questions. Jeff says, is it possible to tie the inclusion of a specific enhancement to a particular answer from one of your questions? For example, completion of sales tax return. So this, Jeff, no, would have to do with the conditional logic item that I mentioned earlier that we covered in detail in last session. So no, there is not a way to do that. You can, choose whether you want to display that as an enhancement. You could have a different model, or you could work it into your questions as conditional formatting rather than having it as an enhancement question. Stephanie says, if you collect in advance upon contract signing, how do you get the pricing to reflect that first advance payment? So Stephanie, we're going to talk about that in an upcoming session when we talk about crafting your quotes, and we're going to get into the payment plan information. So I'm going to park that question for today as well. And then Mark says, I know we touched on this last time, but I still get confused as to why, if each package has different included services, there would be a need for the multiplier. So, Mark, yes, we did talk about this time, and it is something that people do get stuck on quite often. So let me just go back to our parameters page. So basically, if a customer answers no to every single question that you have in your model, you're going to get a base price at the end, that base price that we looked at on the review page. And that will be the base price that appears in your bronze or basic level package. So no matter what, you are already covering your costs, you're already building in your profit. Everything else above that, those multipliers are pretty much what I call gravy. So and this is where you need to work in what's included in your packages. So I know that if I'm including a monthly meeting rather than a quarterly meeting in my middle package, that 30% extra that I'm building in on that multiplier needs to include my time for that meeting. So when I'm building out these packages and I'm deciding what check marks are, so here we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 check marks that are in the silver package that are not in the bronze package. When I'm figuring out my multiplier or my package questions, I need to figure out, is 30% extra going to cover these 6 additional items that I have in this middle package? So completion of sales tax returns, adjusting for foreign currency, maintaining a fixed asset register, annual business review. So because the software is not conditional to these package prices about whether they've said yes or no, I need to use the multipliers. And so this is where it really becomes important to figure out what multiplier you want to use. You could say that you want a multiplier of 50% higher to cover these extra things. Basically, it's just knowing that starting with that base price is covering your basics, that no matter what, you're going to be profitable with that client. And then the differences that you're adding on, all of the check marks for your premium package, would then factor into the multiplier from your base price. So 1.5 times. Is 50% extra going to be enough of a multiplier for the things that you've added in your premium package? Maybe you want it to be 80% higher. So I hope that helps explain it a little more. Because we've talked about it a few times and you've heard me explain it a couple times, if my wording or my explanation isn't helping, I would maybe suggest posting a message into one of Mark's Facebook groups and maybe getting some explanations in different wording of how some other people could maybe explain it, or I can try to revisit it and explain it again a little bit differently. But really, it's about playing with your packages, playing with those multipliers, playing with the review page, testing your model over and over and over. Guys, before I used a model, I spent about 8 hours total playing with it, breaking it, testing it, reviewing it. Like, I spent a lot of time on these packages and multipliers and review pages before I used it with a client. So having said that, I don't see any more questions and we are significantly over on time. Gabby, thank you for hanging around. Mark and Sarah, I'm sorry I went so far over, and everybody else, but thank you for sticking around as well. I am going to sign off. Gabby's going to play a little bit of music. I'll monitor the chat for a few minutes, and otherwise I will see you on October 24th. Thanks, guys.